66 million years ago, the asteroid hit. The sky turned black, the food chains collapsed, and everything above a certain size died. That's what we were taught. Here's what we weren't. Some of them didn't die. Some of them are sitting outside your window right now. That thing you just pictured, that sparrow, that pigeon, that crow you've walked past 1,000 times without a second thought. That is a dinosaur. Not a descendant, not a distant cousin. A dinosaur alive, breathing, watching you. And in 2026, scientists didn't just confirm that connection. They found the biological evidence that had been hiding inside a 150 million-year-old fossil. Preserved so perfectly, it changed the entire timeline of how one lineage of predators survived the apocalypse, evolved new senses, rewired their bodies from the inside out, and became the most successful group of land vertebrates on the planet. This is that story. Let's start with the thing that almost nobody says out loud. When scientists say the dinosaurs went extinct, they're being sloppy. Technically, biologically, taxonomically, that sentence is wrong. Non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. The big ones, the slower-producing, metabolically expensive 40-ton ones, yes, gone. But a specific lineage of small, feathered, fast-moving theropod dinosaurs. They made it. And this isn't distant ancestry, this is direct survival. When a biologist classifies a sparrow today, it sits inside the clade Dinosauria, the same family tree as T-Rex, the same branch as Velociraptor. Meaning every pigeon you ignore, every crow that watches you from a telephone wire, is a surviving predator lineage. That lineage today numbers 10,000 species, more than every mammal species on Earth, combined. Scientists have suspected this for over a century. The fossil Archaeopteryx, discovered in 1861, started the argument. Feathered dinosaur fossils from China in the 1990s supercharged it. But there was always a hole in the story. We could see the feathers, the wishbone, the skeletal architecture shifting generation by generation from reptile toward bird. What we couldn't see, what the fossil record almost never preserves, is soft tissue. The mouth, the tongue, the internal structures that tell you not just what an animal looked like but how it functioned, how it fed, how it sensed the world, how it survived. That changed in 2026. And when it changed, it didn't just fill a gap. It revealed that the transformation from dinosaur to bird was already further along than anyone had realized. Archaeopteryx lithographica. You've seen it: crow-sized, feathered wings, and a mouthful of teeth. For 165 years, it's been the poster fossil for evolutionary transition. The first bird, the missing link, the creature caught mid-transformation between two worlds. Except we've been reading it wrong. Not because the interpretation was bad, but because the technology to see everything in it simply didn't exist yet. Until now. In a landmark 2026 study published in The Innovation, paleontologist Jingmai O'Connor and colleagues applied micro-CT scanning and chemical mapping to Archaeopteryx specimens with a resolution that had never been achieved before. What they found inside that ancient skull stopped the field cold. Archaeopteryx had a bill-tip organ. If you've ever held a duck and felt it press its beak into your palm, that pressure, that probing, that's a bill-tip organ at work. It's a cluster of mechanoreceptors, nerve endings, packed into the tip of the beak that allow birds to sense texture, pressure, and temperature with extraordinary precision. Shorebirds use them to detect prey buried in mud without being able to see it, without being able to touch it with their eyes. It is a sensory system, so sophisticated it operates almost like a sixth sense. And Archaeopteryx, an animal that still had teeth, was already building it. Think about what that means for the timeline. The evolution from a toothed reptilian jaw to a sensitive, high-function bird beak wasn't a sudden leap that happened after the extinction. It wasn't a post-apocalyptic adaptation. It was already in progress, already layered in. While the animal still had its ancestral teeth, the sensory architecture of the modern bird beak was being constructed beneath them. Remember, we're talking about an animal from 150 million years ago. The asteroid is still 84 million years in the future. The birds weren't adapting after the catastrophe. They were already becoming themselves long before it arrived. O'Connor's team also found traces of the hyoid, the tongue bone, and oral papillae, the tiny projections inside modern bird mouths that assist with food management, swallowing, and in some species, vocalization. Every crow you've watched manipulate a walnut, every parrot that uses its tongue with surgical precision, every hummingbird threading nectar from a flower. That sensory system, that intelligence encoded in soft tissue, was already being assembled inside Archaeopteryx. The mouth of the first bird wasn't primitive. It was ahead of schedule. Nature had a problem. How do you take a ground-based predator, built for running, built for killing, built for the demands of a terrestrial life, and make it fly? Because here's what nobody tells you about flight. It is one of the most metabolically expensive things a vertebrate body can do. Imagine sprinting at full speed. Now imagine never being allowed to stop. That's the energy demand of powered flight, sustained, relentless, oxygen-hungry muscular output that makes the act of running look like a nap. And this is where evolution gets weird. Because the problem isn't just muscle. You can evolve bigger muscles. The problem is oxygen. Specifically, how fast you can get oxygen into working muscle tissue while simultaneously expelling carbon dioxide. In mammals, oxygen exchange only happens on the inhale. Half the respiratory cycle is essentially wasted from an efficiency standpoint. Birds solved this differently. Through a system of interconnected air sacs, birds extract oxygen from air on both the inhale and the exhale. Every breath, both directions, is a productive breath. It's one of the most elegant respiratory solutions in vertebrate biology. Here's the part that rewrites the story. Theropod dinosaurs, the group that includes T-Rex, Velociraptor, and the ancestors of birds, already had the precursor of this system. Evidence of air sac structures has been found in theropod vertebrae across multiple species. The bones have the same distinctive hollowing, the same internal architecture as the air sac-connected bones of modern birds. Which means the metabolic hardware for powered flight wasn't invented by birds at all. It was inherited. Inherited from dinosaurs, built into the body plan of terrestrial predators millions of years before any of them left the ground. The lungs were ready, the mouth was evolving, the feathers were already there. What was still missing was proof of how the actual mechanics of flight, the aerodynamics, the wing physics, the real-time control, got worked out in an intermediate body that wasn't quite bird and wasn't quite dinosaur. For that answer, we need to meet the strangest flying creature that ever existed. Meet Microraptors. Crow-sized, razor-clawed, lived 125 million years ago in what is now northeastern China. And it had something no living bird has. 4 wings. Not metaphorically, not approximately. Feathered forelimbs and feathered hindlimbs, both generating aerodynamic lift simultaneously. Imagine if birds today had wings on their legs. For years, Microraptor was treated as an evolutionary curiosity, a weird experiment, an intriguing dead end that proved dinosaurs were playing with flight long before birds appeared, but didn't seem to connect cleanly to how modern birds eventually got there. 2026 changed that assessment completely. Researcher Savannah Heffler and colleagues published a study in PNAS that performed the most detailed aerodynamic analysis of Microraptor ever attempted. They used 2 things: laser-stimulated fluorescence imaging, which reveals feather structures invisible to normal light, and computational fluid dynamics modeling, the same mathematical modeling used to design modern aircraft. And what they found in Microraptor was not what anyone expected from a transitional animal. Microraptor was not a clumsy glider. It was a precision aerial vehicle. The hindwings, those leg feathers, weren't passive. They were active control surfaces, capable of adjusting pitch and yaw in flight in ways that parallel how modern birds use their tails. Microraptor wasn't fumbling toward flight. It had already solved problems that evolutionary biology assumed were solved much later, and it solved them with a body plan we'd never seen before and haven't seen since. This reshapes the entire debate about how flight evolved. For decades, researchers have fought over 2 models: trees down, where early flyers glided from heights, gradually developing powered control, or ground up, where runners leapt into the air with increasing wing assistance. Microraptor blows both models open. Because it represents a third option, a multi-winged intermediate stage where multiple body surfaces contributed to aerial control before the body plan streamlined into 2 wings, before evolution settled on the final design. And this connects directly to a 2025 study by Kayat and colleagues in communications biology, which found that Anchiornis, another small feathered dinosaur, had feather arrangements already optimized for aerodynamic efficiency in ways previously thought exclusive to true birds. The picture isn't one lucky mutation. It's iterative engineering, Millions of years of testing, refinement, and optimization across multiple experimental body plans, until one configuration proved so effective that it survived everything the planet could throw at it. That configuration is the bird. And right now, there's a living version of it outside your window. And here's where scientists start arguing. Because not everyone in the field accepts this picture. And these aren't fringe voices, these are serious researchers raising challenges that could change everything. Because if even one of these interpretations is wrong, the entire timeline shifts. Challenge 1: the soft tissue problem. When O'Connor's team reports bill-tip organs and oral papillae in Archaeopteryx, they're interpreting chemical traces and microscopic impressions in 150 million-year-old rock. Critics argue we know what modern birds look like, we know what bill-tip organs look like, and when you go looking for something specific in ambiguous fossil data, sometimes you find it whether it's there or not. This isn't an accusation, it's scientific rigor, and it's a real challenge that the field is actively working through. Challenge 2: the four-winged dead end. Microraptor is aerodynamically impressive, but does it matter? Some researchers argue that Microraptor's body plan is so unusual, so unlike the lineage that produced modern birds, that its aerodynamic sophistication is essentially irrelevant to the bird origin story. A brilliant experiment, an evolutionary branch that went nowhere. Proof that flight evolved in dinosaurs, but not proof of how birds specifically got there. A 2025 overview by Sue and Barrett in Biology Letters frames this most clearly. Feathered, flight-capable body plans evolved multiple times independently in the dinosaur lineage. This isn't one clean story with one missing link. It's a bush with dozens of experimental branches, most of which died. What that means, there may be no single missing link. There may never have been one. What 2026's research gives us instead is something arguably more powerful. A set of converging evidence across multiple species, multiple anatomical systems, and multiple research teams that all point toward the same conclusion. The transition from dinosaur to bird wasn't a leap. It was a gradient. And the gradient was further along earlier than anyone realized. So let's go back to the asteroid. 66 million years ago, impact winter, collapsed food chains, the death of 75% of all species on Earth. Here's what the 2026 evidence forces us to see differently. The extinction didn't eliminate the dinosaurs. It selected for one version of them. The large forms, metabolically expensive, slow to reproduce, dependent on the food chains that collapsed they had no path through. But the small feathered theropods, their mouths were already evolving new sensory systems, the bill-tip organs that would let them probe new food sources their ancestors couldn't access. Their lungs were already running on inherited air sac architecture optimized for high-energy output. Their wings, tested across multiple experimental configurations for millions of years, were already refined enough for genuine aerial mobility. They didn't survive despite what they were. They survived because of exactly what they had already become. Work by Pittman and colleagues, published in PNAS in 2022, showed through preserved soft anatomy analysis that shoulder-powered flight mechanics in early avians were already sophisticated, not gliding, not experimental leaping, but controlled, maneuverable, powered flight. That means immediately after the asteroid hit, as the dust was still settling, as the megafauna were collapsing, these animals could move. They could cross distances, find pockets of surviving habitat, exploit seeds and insects and invertebrates that were thriving in the wreckage of larger ecosystems. The catastrophe that ended everything else was, for them, an opening. And that's what the missing link actually was. Not a fossil, not a single creature. A package of traits, assembled over tens of millions of years, tested, refined, layered in piece by piece, that together made one lineage of dinosaurs essentially immune to the specific disaster that killed everything else. The bill-tip organ, the air sac lung, the feathered, four-configuration, aerodynamically tested wing. Each one individually an advantage. Together, survival. Go outside. Find a bird, any bird, the more ordinary the better. Look at its feet. Those scales, that grip, that skeletal architecture that a paleontologist would recognize instantly as theropod, the same lineage as Velociraptor, the same family tree as T-Rex. Look at the way it cocks its head, the precision with which it probes the ground with its beak, using a sensory system we now know that was already being built inside the skull of Archaeopteryx 150 million years ago. That animal has been here longer than our entire genus has existed. It has survived an asteroid impact, the rise of mammals, 5 major climate shifts, and every ecological upheaval this planet has thrown at the theropod lineage for 230 million years. It didn't survive by luck. It survived because evolution spent millions of years preparing it for exactly that disaster, refining its mouth, its lungs, its wings, its metabolism, long before the asteroid was even a distant object in space. The dinosaurs didn't go extinct. They became the most successful group of land vertebrates on Earth. And every single morning, they remind you they're still here. If this changed the way you see the world outside your window, subscribe. Because next week, we're going inside the fossil evidence that suggests some dinosaurs were already warm-blooded before the asteroid hit, and what that means for the oldest boundary in vertebrate biology. The story of survival is longer than we thought. And it's still being written.